The more you allow your child to do things on their own, the more they're willing to do it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Therapy Unmasked here at Ability Innovations. Today we are joined by Nick, like always, and Emily. Emily is the team lead for our occupational therapists here at our Layton location. She does a really good job. Today, we wanted to bring her in and talk about self-care. Now, self-care is kind of like an interesting topic with occupational therapy because it hits on a lot of things. When we think of occupational therapy, we think of what a child's occupation is in their daily life. And sometimes that occupation involves getting dressed, going to the bathroom, brushing their teeth, all those different kind of things, even eating food. So we're going to have Emily kind of talk a little bit about this, but Emily, what are your thoughts on self-care and occupational therapy?
Well, there's so much to it. It might sound simple to just go get up and get dressed or go and brush your teeth. But as occupational therapists, we're looking at the whole picture. We're looking at motor planning. How are they able to pick up the toothbrush and bring it to their mouth and sequence through all of those motions? We're also looking at routine. Are they able to follow a lot of those steps? And then once you kind of get the basics down on how to do it, a lot of kiddos that we work with additionally have sensory processing difficulties, and that may be sensory processing disorder, or it may just be sensory sensitivities. We all kind of have our own sensitivities in a way, but it can be a lot more elevated in some kiddos where they're super avoidant of certain sensations, or they may be seeking some sensations. And so I'm mostly going to focus today on the sensory aspect of it, because a lot of times, especially children that are autistic may have these difficulties. And I've had a lot of parents say, oh, I can't even take my child to the hair salon to get their hair cut without having a complete meltdown, or we're struggling to even get them in the bathroom to brush their teeth, or their nails are so sharp and they're clawing at people because they can't allow us to cut their nails. So I just wanted to brush up on some things that we can do to help them.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that sensory can either facilitate or get in the way of performance and the success that a kid might have. And so we're so glad to have you here to talk about that. What would be, like, if you're talking with parents, what do you think is the thing that comes up the most about, like, what self-care activity comes up the most, do you think?
I think the most common ones are not liking their face wet when they're getting a bath, or not allowing their hair to be brushed, not having any interest in brushing their hair. Nail cutting has been a big one. And then toileting is a huge one, but toileting is its own separate entity. And there's a lot of things that we look at through that. I think Shawnee has an awesome podcast on that.
Yeah, she's got a pretty cool course. And we can talk about that at the end more. But one thing I noticed, because I get to go film your sessions sometimes and other therapist sessions. And whenever I film feeding sessions, the first thing a therapist asks the child to do is wash their hands. I've noticed a lot of kids hate getting their hands wet. They don't like that feeling. So how do you handle an issue or a situation like that where a kid doesn't want to wash their hands because they don't like the feeling of having wet hands?
Yeah, so the first thing is just desensitization for starting any of these self-care tasks, especially with the hand washing. Just engaging in like water play is always fun, like having a tub of water and mixing different colors in them, using droppers, using different utensils before even getting their full hands like submerged in water, and just making it really fun. with different types of activities. You can even get like a wet washcloth and start like giving them hand massages, and you always work your way up towards the area that is sensitive. And you can make bubble monsters,
right?
Things like that.
It is interesting too, because it's something that like someone who's more neurotypical might take for granted, like something just so simple as washing your hands or brushing your teeth. But we forget that a lot of kids with sensory needs, whether that's avoidance or seeking, or a lot of kiddos with more neurodivergent patterns in their life, it's harder for them to do these things. And so that's why we have occupational therapy. If you could break down, like, what are some of like the most important things that you would focus on as an occupational therapist when it comes to self-care?
I think the biggest thing is allowing your child to feel in control and feel like they have a say in things. So if we're going back to the hand washing topic, especially at home, experiment with different soaps. Like what soap do they, or what smell do they like? Do they like foamy soap, or do they like the gel soap? Do they like it to be really sudsy or not sudsy at all? And kind of just experiment with those types of things and giving them a sense of control. A lot of children thrive on routine. Other children can't stand routine. So you kind of just have to do what works best. But a lot of times, like around the clinic, we'll use the sequencing steps of how to wash your hands. We first turn on the water, we run our hands through, we use the soap, and it's like a step-by-step. Make sure you're rubbing, and then give them the choice. Do you want to use a paper towel, or do you want to dry your hands with the blow dryer? And just allowing them to feel a little bit more confident with that.
Yeah, and the process is their own, and it's not being like forced upon them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then if they're washing their hands and we get them to that point, and then they're going to be like doing stuff with their face in feeding, right? They're going to be putting things in their mouth and all those things, and they might get messy. And if you already know that a kid has like sensitivity with their face, does washing their hands help with that? Like, does it help prepare them for other things like their face that's going to need to be washed later?
Yeah, I think so. Kind of like how you start far and move your way up. It's definitely different areas. And so a really important thing is to start them young with getting like their face rubbed, like give them little facial massages. Or
so you're talking like even as like a baby.
Oh yeah, like infant massage is very, very important to start with, and let them get used to what it feels like to be touched and cleaned and wiped. But a huge thing is, I have read in my research that especially with feeding, you don't want to constantly wipe their face while they're feeding, because that can cause distress and actually push back their like desire to try new foods, because they're constantly like getting touched every single time. There's a lot of parents that are like, oh, you're messy, like let me clean you, but let them get messy. I think that is such a huge thing to focus on. Is of course, if they can't stand it, they can have a napkin and wipe their hands down. But if their face is all messy and their hands are messy, just let it be until after you're done.
Yeah, that could be like a normal process that they go through. They get messy, and then at the end, they get cleaned up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of kids too, where they have like a low threshold or a low tolerance for all of that sensory input. And so you start to notice that they're starting to get overwhelmed, and the more activity or the more things that they're doing sensory wise, it just starts to build up for them. And then at the end, you see a meltdown. And so if you get to that point, maybe as a parent or as a therapist, if you get to that point where your kid is like getting really overwhelmed with the activity, what do you do to kind of calm things back down?
I ask them if they need a break and what we could do for that break. Do we want to take a quick walk around the clinic? Do we want to go swing? Do we need to listen to some music? Just something to kind of get our mind off of things and then come back to it at a later time when they feel ready.
even if they're eating and stuff, like you can take a break in the middle and that's okay.
I think it's okay to take a break because you don't want to put too much pressure on the kid. And if they need a break, they need a break, and honoring that. I would still try to stay in the kitchen if I'm working on like feeding, unless they really need to get out. Just because a lot of times if we leave the kitchen, it's very hard to go back. But some kids do better like standing or rocking. So we really look at their whole environment. When I have kids that are really fidgety, especially with sitting down in the kitchen, I'll put like a wobble cushion under them so they can kind of rock back and forth. I always make sure their feet are planted because it prevents them from like kicking their legs a lot. If their feet are on something, they feel a little bit more supported and stable. And that can be very helpful.
So what kinds of other things do you see besides like hands and face that might be sensory issues that you have to deal with?
I really wanted to focus on a couple topics. I'll start first with nail cutting. So you can use like songs, a lot of like distractions. Some kids do better when you have like if they're watching a video that they like or TV, just something that makes them feel comfortable. The first thing I would recommend before doing anything on a child is allowing them to practice on others. And children learn best when things are being modeled. So show them that you're cutting your own nails. Like just say, I'm going to cut my nails so they're shorter. Sometimes even when children hear the word cut, it can kind of trigger like, oh, that's like a pain. That's alerting. So if the word cut is too much, you can even say trim. Let's trim our nails. Let's trim our hair. If they're seeing you do it and then they're practicing on, you can even put stickers on your nails. You can rub lotion on their nails. You can put Q-tips, like tape Q-tips, and practice cutting the Q-tips before even cutting their nails, just to kind of get them used to it. Paint your doll's nails and practice cutting their nails. Practicing it through play is a huge successful thing that we do here that just makes them more comfortable, and it makes it more normal to talk about when you're pampering the dolls and things like that.
That makes sense too. This brings me back to a conversation we had in the clinic once, where we were having issues with some parents just bringing their kids in and saying, I can't clip my kids' nails at home, you do it, And it's kind of, that's not what we're here for. We're not here to groom your child or to do those things for them, but we're here to help them learn how to do it themselves and to help the parents learn how to facilitate that at home. Do you want to talk to that a little bit of like the difference between just doing it and like getting the kiddo comfortable to do it themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, like toddlers and younger kids, you definitely you're going to have to do it for them because it's like really hard to get the right angle and make sure we're not going too close. But even if you're doing like hand over hand assist and allowing them to hold on while you do the actual cutting, like facilitates that independence and that confidence. The more you allow your child to do things on their own, the more they're willing to do it. Also on that, if you do it right after bath time or something, it makes the nails more soft. So there's less of a loud sound.
Pain involved, yeah.
Mm-hmm. If they're afraid of the nails like flying in the air, you could put like glasses on or something, like sunglasses, and be like, we're going to have our protective goggles and make it like a fun activity. You definitely want to give them the confidence to do it themselves. But if it becomes too dysregulating and they're just having complete meltdowns after you've tried all of these things, we've done desensitization, we've done practice on others or dolls, maybe you could just do it while they're sleeping and then just say, the nail cutting fairy came during the night and trimmed your nails or something like that. That's like a last resort, you can always do it at bedtime. The next topic that I wanted to go through that a lot of parents emphasize difficulties with is hair washing or hair brushing and hair cutting. Yeah. I would say hair cutting is the biggest one, because going into another environment like that where somebody's like coming at you with, especially for guys
tools.
With like the buzzer.
Yeah.
Like the buzzer can be really loud, and it also depends on like, what is it that's bothering them? Is it the sound of the buzzer? Is it sitting on a high stool that they've never been on before?
They might
feel unstable or subconscious. They don't want a stranger coming at them with scissors. And then with hair brushing, they don't like their face, or with hair washing, they don't like their face getting wet, or they don't want soap getting in their eyes and things like that.
I know, like for me, when I was a kid, and I think this is true for a lot of kids, like there was so many times where I was so ticklish around my neck, right, and around my ears. And I knew that hair cutting was going to involve a lot of this overwhelming, like, tickling, and I was cringing the whole time. And I think even with, like, we didn't like my dad to wash our hair when we were in the bath when we were little. My mom had to do it because I always felt like my dad, maybe he was too rough with it or it tickled more. And so we really shied away from that. And I could see how like being ticklish could be overwhelming for any of those activities.
Yeah. So we all have those sensitivities. Some people might be more ticklish in some areas, but going back to that infant massage and on, like practice doing scalp massages on each other, give each other a little shoulder rub, like just make it normal to bring your hands close to your head. There's like for those heads for other people. There's head scratchers. You can put that head scratcher on their head and just kind of like desensitize in that way. A lot of times too, especially with like hair brushing, if a child has a mirror and they can see what's going on, even if it could be with hair washing too, put a mirror next to the shower and have them see what's going on in the back of their head, and have them, if they're worried about the parent coming at them with the soap, maybe put the soap in their hand and say, can you rub this in your hair, and allow them to do as much as they can.
I even heard of a parent that I can't remember what place it was, but when they went to get a haircut, like they gave the little trimmer buzzer thing to the kid and let him like do it. And then they guided his hand to start doing it with him. And he was part of that process. And they said that changed everything.
I also like to, before like going into a salon or something, if it's going to be a buzzer or a vibration tool, I'll have them practice like holding the Z vibe or something that vibrates in their hand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And practice using that and pretend that it's a buzzer and that we're giving each other haircuts.
Run it through your hair.
Pretend to do those things. If you don't have any dolls that you don't want their hair destroyed, you can put yarn on like a paper doll and practice giving the paper dolls haircuts. You can use Play-Doh and make little hairs and cut that with Play-Doh, or cut that with scissors.
I do love that though. It normalizes the activity. It gets the kid involved in the activity. And so when it actually happens to them, they're more comfortable with it.
Yeah, it's not some foreign thing. Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Sometimes even just starting low. I remember when I was a child, I had a very like sensitive scalp, and every time my mom like pulled on it, I would kind of freak out. And so she always started brushing my hair from the bottom up. So you just brush and go up and work your way. So if they're not even letting you come here, like, let's just do the tips. Let's just do the ends. And then as we get more comfortable, working our way all the way to the top. It can be very helpful to have like something heavy on the child. It works on their proprioceptive system. Like if you have that heavy input, it can bring a lot of calmness to them.
Yeah, like the deep pressure from that they would get as babies if we wrapped them in a blanket, or you hold them close to you, they're getting this deep pressure, and it can be really calming.
Yeah. I've heard like some kids do better sitting in the parent's lap if it's too much, like at the hair salon. So the parent will sit in the chair and then the kid can sit on their lap and they can be held that way. Or if they're feeling like, I can do this, I can sit in the chair alone, they now make weighted capes. It's a really cool invention and it's been trending, but there's like a little kind of like how we have weighted lap pads. It just goes around their neck and it provides that. They make weighted stuffies now. So if you don't want to carry around a weighted blanket or a weighted lap pad, you can put a little weighted oxalotl in your lap or something.
That's fun.
And that can be very calming. And I love what you said about the holding the tools in their hand. That's a huge one. They can hold it and bring it up. They also have sensory friendly like cutters too. If you can't even get to the salon, a lot of parents have been cutting their children's hair at home and they have like guards with scissors and it measures it and everything. And they just cut it themselves.
Interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of options out there. And I guess if you have questions, you can always ask your occupational therapist and they're more than happy to help.
So we were talking about how, you know, we can let kids hold the hair trimmers and maybe even hold the scissors a little bit. And so they're familiar with those tools before. But what about like if the buzzing part of the tool, if that noise is aversive to kids, what would you recommend?
Yeah, there's a lot of noises in the salon that can be a lot to them, whether it's other people talking or maybe they have the music too loud there. So another thing that I suggest is putting in either earplugs if they want complete silence, or even AirPods or something that with a noise canceling, and they can listen to their own music and kind of just do their own thing. They can watch a video on their iPad and not hear anything that's going on. One of my kids that I just recommended, they said they put the AirPods in and it went it went great. So that's another thing. And then just preparing them ahead of time too by giving them like joint compressions, deep pressure, if they want to hug before, just making them feel safe and comfortable.
I had a kid that would, they had this little backpack that he would wear and they'd be like, okay, we're going out to the hair cutting and the store. And they knew that they were going to need to get some input into him beforehand to help him calm. So they just loaded his backpack full of water bottles and books that he might want. And so it was a weighted backpack that he would wear all the way to the car. And then when he got out of the car, they would walk around and he would get this weight and deep pressure. And then when he would get in the chair, they would take it off and then he was ready to go.
I always love fidgets too during those things, keeping their hands busy. They also make those visual timers. There's one with like a smiley face that counts down if they want to see the full countdown, or there's even those bubble ones that you can just rock back and forth. So we're like, we're going to wait till all the bubbles go down and then we'll take a break and then we're going to do it again and just give them that sense of control again with time or with counting or with songs. So now we can kind of go into toothbrushing if you guys want to talk a little bit about toothbrushing.
Do it.
A lot of times it's hard for kiddos just to even get in the bathroom. So what I've been doing with a lot of my parents is making a consistent visual routine. That makes a huge difference in a lot of kids. But like I said, it depends on if your kid thrives on routine or not. But sometimes when they hear things, it can be more dysregulating than seeing it and saying, okay, first I get up, I go to the bathroom, I get dressed, I brush my teeth, I eat breakfast, those types of things.
So they see this whole schedule laid out visually, and then they're able to do that instead of somebody saying, all right, kiddo, you got to get up, you got to get dressed, So that might be alerting to them or aversive, but if they see it, it might go better.
Yeah.
Okay.
It can definitely ease that anxiety about it and ease the pressure. There's some fun things that we've done with those routines where you can have just like Velcro stickers of like their favorite characters, or instead of just having like a check mark, we can say, how can we get all of our cars like on the schedule, or can we get all of our Paw Patrol characters on there? Or if they're not interested in using stickers, they can like draw with a dry erase marker. If they don't like using the marker, we've put up those push lights that are in closets and you like push them and then it goes on and on or on and off. I will have them put the visual schedule in like a centralized area and have the lights underneath it. And then either all the lights will be on and every time they finish a task, they get to turn it off or
that's clever.
Turn all the lights off and then turn it on one by one. Like, oh, I got all my lights. Did you get all your lights off or all your lights on? And that can be kind of rewarding too, to kind of see it.
It makes me think of like our smart watches where we click something and we're like, yeah, I did it. And it says, good job. I think that's great for kids and adults.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I kind of want to do that. Set up lights everywhere.
Like, yay, I brushed my teeth.
Yay! I know. I get satisfaction from checklists. Personally, I thrive on them. If I don't have my stuff checked off, then something's wrong.
Something's not going right.
Something's not going right. And then as far as like actually getting into the bathroom, just setting up their environment. So especially if it's in the morning or at night, you can dim the lights. You don't have to have it super bright in there. You can give them, again, that sense of control. What type of toothpaste do you want to be using? Do they like minty? Do they like the sweeter kinds? I don't know what they have now, like strawberry.
Maybe it's the foam that they don't like, and you get toothpaste that doesn't foam up.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes simply going to the store and saying, what color toothbrush do you want, can make all the difference. Some kiddos love the electric toothbrushes and some kiddos are afraid of them. So experimenting with electric versus standard. They have some electric toothbrushes that just very like minimally vibrate, or there's the ones that spin a lot. So kind of just the type can make all the difference too.
I don't know if this is still a thing, but when I was a kid, the toothbrushes that were really popular were the ones that when you put it in your mouth, it would play a song. You could like hear the song. And then when the song was done, you knew to stop brushing your teeth. I don't know if that's still a thing. But
they still have those, and they have ones that light up too, and it'll like stop once it's been the 2 minutes. And again, bringing in that visual timer too can help if your toothbrush doesn't have an automatic timer. Singing songs or listening to songs while doing it can help, but just kind of making the experiment more fun. We practice, if they don't even like the toothbrush going towards their mouth, we practice, again, doing it on models. So we'll use our toothbrush models. And if you don't have one, you can make one out of paper and laminate it. You can color in their teeth and get them all dirty and then practice just wiping it away and brushing.
So you can kind of simulate the activity beforehand. I know a lot of kids too, parents have to start with doing the teeth brushing for the kid, right? And so it can be really alerting to have, some pointy object coming at your face. And, we've talked about like letting the kid hold it and you help guide them and things like that. But I've also seen where they have toothbrushes that are shaped like a bite guard, and they have bristles inside of the bite guard. They're little U-shaped toothbrushes. And so instead of having this pointy object, and maybe I have a really strong gag reflex and I just can't stand this pointy thing going in my mouth, I can bite down on this guard and then you just move it back and forth and it brushes all of your teeth at once. And I know some of those are on the market today too. All right. So what about if you've got a kid that, they don't even want to open their mouth? I mean, we've got kids that have been on feeding tubes, for example, and they don't want anything in their mouth really. And you got to brush their teeth. So what kinds of things can you do to like prepare their mouth, prepare their face for teeth brushing?
The earlier you can do it, the better. So start brushing their teeth really, really young. You can put we call them oral motor tools. We have something called a Nook that it just has like little soft, like bumpy edges, and just kind of moving it around their mouth. But of course, before you just go to their mouth, make sure they're comfortable with the tool, make sure they can hold it. And we also have the vibrational oral motor tools that is similar to a
little more calming.
Could be more calming. A lot of children feel more calming, or they're like, whoa, get that out of my mouth. So you kind of just have to work on that. But also, before even going into the mouth, you can use washcloths or put lotion on your hands and give them soft massages. Start on their neck and go up to their jaw and their cheeks, and even their temples. But routine is everything. So if you are going to use a washcloth, you can just do the same order every single day and get them used to that, and then start progressing to the toothbrush.
Actually getting it in there. Okay. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach teeth brushing and things like that. And usually we're doing like brushing right after they wake up or right before they go to sleep. So toothbrushing might actually be a segue to getting ready for bed. Tell us a little bit more about what you found out about sleep and preparing for that.
The biggest thing with sleep is we want to focus on the environment. Like, what is going on in their environment?
Kind of like you said, dimming the lights in the bathroom?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's actually very, very beneficial to dim the lights like an hour or two before bed. It actually gets your body ready, because instead of having those bright lights on like we have all day, just dimming the lights can make all the difference. As far as when they're preparing for bed, they have to get in their pajamas. So what is their favorite pajamas? Do they like really soft, silky ones, or do they like flannel or cotton? Like whatever material they like the best, get them in their comfy PJs. And if they're sensitive to tags, cut those tags out. If they're sensitive to seams, some kids will wear their clothes inside out because they can't stand the seam on their skin. So that's something that a lot of kiddos will just kind of do on their own.
Yeah. Softer materials and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Reading, like taking a warm bath before bedtime too, can be really calm. You can put like lavender, like Epsom salt. The smell of lavender is also very calm. So if you have a oil diffuser, you can put lavender on, or have them put lavender on some cotton balls and put it under their pillows. They all have all kinds of sprays, like linen spray. You could also use that. Reading a book before bedtime is really, really calming. Every time I read before bed, it makes me, I'll just fall asleep. And then sometimes children may be picky about the sheets. Like, are your sheets soft enough? Are they too heavy? Do we need to if we're getting too hot in the night, that's really, really hard. So setting your thermometer lower in the night can help for sure to not overheat. Some children they sleep better when they know they're comforted. So if they're sleeping in their own bed, you can put stuffed animals around them or pillows around them. You can also use like a weighted blanket. Weighted blankets can be very good. They make sleep socks for that compression. Sometimes kids do really well.
Like a stretchy material.
Mm-hmm. It's more stretchy. You could even try sleeping in a sleeping bag. Maybe they like that closeness, or maybe they like to sprawl around and the sleeping bag would not be comfortable. It's kind of just experimenting what works for them.
Yeah, and I know a lot of kids use like weighted blankets and things like that. I would just say, well, like one precautionary statement is making sure that it is like 5 to 10% of their body weight, because a lot of times you find weighted blankets on the market, they're like 7-8 pounds. And for a kid, that's probably too much, like for a small child. And so making sure that the weighted blanket fits the person, right? 5 to 10% of their body weight.
I was going to ask too, since we're on the topic of blankets and sleep, how do we feel about kids who can only sleep with like a certain character on their blanket, or like, I won't sleep in the sheets unless they're like Yu-Gi-Oh themed or like Blue's Clues themed, or like is that good for the child? Does it matter? Do we want them to like be able to move away from that? Like, what are your thoughts as therapists? I guess I'm asking both of you.
Well, I was going to say, I think that, kids are going to have preferences. That's normal. Like People like certain clothing. People like certain characters on their sheets. And as much as we can accommodate that, I think it's probably a good thing. But I would also say, like, there's going to be times where they can't have that. Maybe they are in a hotel and you can't take your favorite bed sheets with you or things like that. So, start looking at things for kids that are like things that they can take with them. So maybe it's a stuffed animal. They have like their character sheets at home. Maybe it's Paw Patrol or PJ Masks or something, but maybe they have one of those stuffed characters with them too. Say, well, we have to leave our sheets home, but you can take this little stuffed animal with you and they can go with you to the hotel room because then you can take it with them. That's what I would recommend. Do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would say they're going to have their preferences and I would allow it if that's going to allow them to sleep, but then figuring out ways to be flexible and say, oh, we're not going to have these sheets tonight, but we can choose a stuffy, and kind of saying what they can do instead. And then one more thing on the sleep is some children are afraid of the dark. So giving them a fun nightlight, letting them choose their nightlight, using white noise or a sound machine can also really help them.
And those kinds of things build up a routine for kids. And that routine can be very, very helpful because I think a lot of kids, correct me if I'm wrong, their body, it starts alerting their body like, oh, it's time for bed. So if they have trouble sleeping, if they go through their routine, it's every point of that routine is telling their body, oh, it's time for bed. I'm gonna start shutting down, and you get into that circadian rhythm kind of thing, right?
Yeah, our bodies have its own natural circadian rhythm. So if we're going to bed at the same time and we're waking up at the same time, we feel a lot more energized and ready for the day ahead.
Some of the interesting research that I've read recently talked about even the wake-up routine is very important with circadian rhythms and figuring out like how to reset our body and how to reset those circadian rhythms. And they said as soon as your kids wake up, exposing them to bright light. Like I know my kids sleep with like the shade curtains so that there's no sunlight that's coming through. But in the morning, we just pop those things open and the kids are like, oh, but it resets their circadian rhythms so that when the lights start to dim at the end of the night or at the end of the day, then it's triggering that circadian rhythm. But that might not get triggered if they're not exposed to bright lights when they wake up. So there's some new research coming out about the routine of waking up as well as going to bed. There's probably lots of things out there, and we could probably talk a lot about different tips and tricks and different, self-care things that come up within a kid's day. We would also like to know if there's anything that parents listening to this podcast at home, what other questions might they have, or what other issues have they seen in their child's day that they might want to talk about or hear about in a podcast? And we could have Emily come back and we could discuss those things. So put those things in the comment section below and let us know what your thoughts and questions are.
Thank you, Emily, for joining us today. And I want to give her a lot of credit because she came to me and said, I want to talk about this. Usually I have to go beg them to come in here. So that was very, very awesome of her. And we definitely appreciate it.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, guys.
So we'll go ahead and end today's episode. Again, this has been Therapy Unmasked. It's brought to you by Ability Innovations. Head on over to www.abilityinnovations.com. We have lots of free resources there, including blogs, articles, courses, parent support resources, even handouts that we have on there that are for free that you can grab. We also have a lot of paid courses that you can pay for that will help give you an edge at home when it comes to helping your child overcome difficulties that they have. One thing we didn't really touch on, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning, was toilet training, which is kind of its whole new thing. We have a therapist here named Shawnee, and she put together this really awesome potty training course for kids with neurodivergent needs. And so go ahead and check that out. If you use code FREETHERAPY, you can get your first month free. So you can dive into that course and see if it's right for you and your child. So again, special thanks to our guests. Feel free to leave us a comment, like Nick said, and let us know if there's anything in regards to your child's therapeutic journey that you'd like us to cover. Other than that, we will see you in the next episode of Therapy Unmasked. Bye.